Hello and welcome to AA Beyond Belief, the podcast. I'm your host, John S. Today I'll be speaking with Roger C. from AA Agnostica. Roger will look back at the beginnings of the site, why it started, how it started, reflect on his experiences while he was there, and talk about the final post of the site, which was posted today. Hello, Roger. Thank you for joining us here on AA Beyond Belief, the podcast. Good to have you.
Thank you, John, for having me.
And what a day this is. You're announcing today on the 15th that AA Agnostica will not be publishing any more articles. And this is a big deal for our community, I think. And so I thought it appropriate to have you here to talk about the site, how and why it got to be, and to get your thoughts on on leaving and on AA, on secular AA just in general. So I don't know. Why don't we kind of start with the beginning? I know that you were fairly new in AA when all this was coming down, weren't you? You were fairly.
Yeah, I'd had about a year in sobriety and in AA at the time that Beyond Belief, which is my home group, was booted out by Toronto Intergroup. So I was fairly new, and it was part of what that meant is that the shock was perhaps even more dramatic for me when that happened.
Yeah, I could see. So you were going to that group for a year, mm-hmm. and it was after about a year that you got booted out of the intergroup.
Yeah, we were booted out on May 31st, 2011. Beyond Belief had been started in 2009, okay. And it had been totally accepted by Intergroup. Intergroup was very welcoming to us. In fact, Intergroup had pages on its website that we could have. So we had a page on their website. Wow. And on that page were the alternative 12 steps.
Really? On the internet, on an Intergroup's website?
On the Intergroup's website. The only thing that Intergroup asked us to do was at the top of the alternative steps to write the following, which was, this version is adapted from the original 12 steps, which were first published in 1939 in Chapter 5 of Alcoholics Anonymous. That's all they asked us to do, so that people would understand that it was our version, that we weren't trying to change the original steps. So for really a couple of years, those alternative 12 steps were on Intergroup's website.
Wow, I never knew that.
Yeah, on our own page. And they knew that we said at the beginning of our meetings, we recited the alternative 12 steps, these alternative 12 steps. And again, their only requirement, the only condition that they imposed was that we read that sentence at the very beginning. So we did. Every time we would read the alternative 12 step at the beginning of the meeting, we'd say, this version is adapted from the original 12 steps, which were first published in 1939 in Chapter 5 of Alcoholics Anonymous. We were very comfortable with that. Intergroup was very comfortable with that.
I think so. I like it. It's very respectful, I think.
I think so, too. And I think it's exactly the proper way to do it, is that these are not the original. Right. This is our version. And we did it that way, and we're quite comfortable with that way. And, somewhere along the line, in 2011, the leadership of Intergroup changed.
Okay.
And without talking to anybody at Beyond Belief, our page disappeared from the Intergroup website. And all of a sudden, we were off the meeting list. And there was a vote to toss us from Intergroup.
A vote that took place without your group being represented?
Precisely. It was highly problematic because the executive had already decided that we were gone, so we couldn't even speak at the meeting in which the vote occurred. It was, and it was really quite complex and quite disturbing because there were several versions of the minutes of that meeting where that occurred. that were posted and then taken down, and then a new version was put up. And then that was taken down, a new version was put up. But putting all of that stuff aside, the very peculiar behavior of Intergroup and the executive at the time, one of the most startling things to me when we were booted out was just how painful it was for members of Beyond Belief.
Yeah.
The first meeting that I was at after we were booted out, there were people who cried.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah. And there were people who were worried that the meeting would collapse.
Right.
That some wouldn't have any place to go and would go out and go back and drink and maybe end up dead. And that was the degree of consternation, the degree of disturbance that everybody felt, and it was really quite painful.
That's exactly how I would describe that, and how I did describe that at our area assembly when we were, and I won't go into much detail about that, but we were having a motion that had to do with all this entire affair. And I mentioned on the floor of that area assembly that this is a painful history for us. Mm-hmm. And obviously it would be. I mean, anybody who has experience in Alcoholics Anonymous, the community of Alcoholics Anonymous, like I have here in KC, I'm very close to my central office. That's the number I called for help, and I feel connected to them, and they connect me to the rest of the AA community here. So if they were to say you're no longer welcome, that it would be extremely painful. It hurts.
Mm-hmm. And it was very painful to us. I remember going to a couple of intergroup meetings, and it's not only us, members of Beyond Belief, who understood that it was particularly dangerous for us to have been booted out. But they knew that at Intergroup as well. And there were people who simply didn't care.
Okay, so Intergroup knew that by having you removed from the meeting directory and off their website, that was a dangerous move for them to do? They realized that?
It was a dangerous move for the members of these groups that had been that had been booted out, that they were in danger. Okay. And the astonishing part of it is that some of the representatives at Intergroup really didn't care.
Yeah.
They didn't care what happened to the members of Beyond Belief and the other group that was booted out, We Agnostics. They didn't care. These people could do whatever they wanted. They could go back to drinking. They could maybe drink themselves to death. These people didn't care. And if you want to define what is not AA, what is anti-AA, for me, that's exactly it.
So were these people that decided to remove the steps and to delist these groups, was this a new regime at the intergroup? Or is that what happened? You had a new set of people that came in?
Exactly, yes.
Were they getting pressure from other groups in the city?
No, I think it was the people who took over Intergroup had their own agenda.
Okay. And
it was a kind of a top-down from the executive of Intergroup down. So it was... it was just a small group of people who were definitely opposed to these agnostic groups and decided to take the action that they took.
Okay.
Now, coming back to Agnostica and how it came into being, Joe and David at the time was the secretary, and Joe had been one of the people. Joe was the author of Beyond Belief,
right,
the book, and he had been part of starting the group in 2009. So Joe and David decided to create a website.
Oh, really? I did not know that came from them.
That came from them. Didn't come from me. Oh. So they decided to create a website called AA Toronto Agnostic so that the meetings would be listed and people would know about it.
Which still exists to this day.
Which still exists to this day. And what happened is David, who was the secretary and was so disturbed and hurt by being expulsed from AA that he started going to SOS meetings And then he quit going to meetings altogether. And I haven't seen David since.
Wow.
But he had started up the website, and when he decided he was just leaving, he asked me to be involved, and that's how I got involved. And so this website that Joe and David started, called AA Toronto Agnostics, I got involved in it. And this was it started on June 15th, 2011. And about 6 months later is when the name changed to Agnostica.
Gotcha.
But initially, I didn't know what to do with it. I just thought it wasn't a very brilliant website or anything. It was on WordPress.com, so it was free and all of that sort of thing. And but I decided that it would be nice to put the occasional post up.
Okay.
And so the first one on June 22nd, 2011, was an article by Bill Wilson, Anarchy Melts, or whatever the name of it is.
Was that posted on AA Agnostica?
AA Toronto Agnostics.
AA Toronto, gotcha. Yeah. Okay.
And so
that's pre-AA Agnostica.
That was the first post, and we didn't put that many posts up on the website at first.
Right.
There was a period where for 2 months nothing went up.
Right. But you created that site specifically so your groups could be listed, right?
Because we were concerned about the members of the group, and we were concerned about other people who would want a secular AA meeting. We wanted to continue the meeting. We wanted them to know that it continued to exist. Yep. And so it was out of pure service that website went up. And that was its original purpose.
Yeah. And do you know that today, if you Google AA meetings in Toronto, that website comes up just beneath the Greater Toronto Area Intergroup.
Sure.
It's right underneath it. I'm
sure it drives Intergroup nuts.
So it's like you almost still have your own page, and you're right there with them, and so your groups probably haven't seen a drop, have they? In fact, you've actually grown since 2011.
Very much so. Within months, there was a new group widening the gateway in Richmond Hill that started up, and they were removed, and then We Are Not Saints started up, and then another We Agnostics meeting started up. I mean, there were two then, there are certainly a dozen now. And they're wonderful meetings.
Yeah.
They're wonderful meetings. I remember the first time I went to Beyond Belief. I'd been out of rehab for 6 months or so, and I was getting really, really distressed by the religiosity of the meetings in Hamilton. And I went to Toronto and discovered this meeting. It was still listed. Went to the meeting, Beyond Belief, listened to the people there. I couldn't believe it. They just spoke so honestly and shared so openly. I walked out of the meeting and I thought, I'm saved.
Yeah.
And that was, and to this day, having been to a meeting that we started here in Hamilton 3 months ago tonight, to this day, those meetings are crucial to my ongoing sobriety, my sense of well-being, my ability to share honestly with other people. That's so important.
I think that people, I don't know what they think, but I have a feeling that there are some hardcore, very rigid, dogmatic groups who might look at us and think that we're very much anti-AA or something. And it's quite the contrary. We're very, very much involved in Alcoholics Anonymous and very passionate about it. And I think that's evidenced by the new AA meetings that we're starting up all over the country, in Toronto and everywhere else.
I agree totally. If any group of people is respectful of and implements the responsibility declaration, it's we secularists in AA. The idea that anybody anywhere who reaches out for help ought to have AA there for them is core to AA. The responsibility declaration was adopted at Maple Leaf Gardens in Toronto in 1965. Bill Wilson led 10,000 people in reciting the responsibility declaration for the first time in 1965 here in Toronto. Yeah. And I believe in it totally. that anybody, anywhere who reaches out for help, the hand of AA ought to be there, and for that, I'm responsible.
And speaking of that, going back to the website again, I kind of, okay, so you were still AA, you were still Toronto Agnostics, still had that website, and you started posting on that site. Mm-hmm. Okay. So how long were you doing that, and how did you transition from that to AA Agnostica? You want to go into that?
Sure. What happened is we were just putting up the odd article here or there from time to time, and then it occurred to me that it would be wonderful to get more people involved. Mm-hmm. It would be wonderful to get people in the United States, in Australia, and the United Kingdom involved. And so we started moving in that direction. And it was around that time, as I say, we were 6 months. The website had been up 6 months where we decided to change the name. It wasn't AA Toronto Agnostics only anymore. It was AA Agnostica. And so we began inviting people everywhere to contribute, to write articles that we would post, that we would happily post. And that took the website off in another direction. We had to get it off of WordPress.com and find a web host and create a much more elaborate and complex website. And the reach out. We had to reach out. We had to reach out to people and invite them to participate. And that was wonderful. That was great. And it was the beginning of the AA Agnostica that we know today.
Yeah. And I think that had that gave Agnostic AA an internet presence like it did not have up until that time. Because I can't remember when it was, Roger. I could probably go back and look at my Amazon book history to figure out when I bought The God Delusion. But there was my descent into atheism was kind of a gradual thing. And I remember doing searches on the internet for atheists and AA and nothing coming up. You do that now, you see AA Agnostica everywhere.
And there are other wonderful websites, like I'll name one, AA Beyond Belief.
There you go.
But it's true. When these two groups were booted out by Intergroup, I decided to write this essay, A History of Agnostic Groups in AA. And I thought, there was a long weekend coming up. I thought it would be done by the end of the long weekend. There was nothing. There was absolutely no information. There was nothing. And it was working. It was amazing because I did find the New York website. Mm-hmm. Let's not say there was nothing, because it was the New York website.
And I think San Francisco maybe.
Yeah. And the New York website was remarkable because it had been around since 2001. Right.
And they had those meetings listed.
And they had the meetings listed. What a remarkable a thing to do, you know.
Yeah.
These people deserve an enormous amount of credit for doing that. And so I found that, and all of a sudden I had some connections, and then I found Ernest Kurtz, and that was quite remarkable to me. I'd never read A History of Agnostic Groups, not God, a history of AA. I'd never read it, and so all of a sudden there it was, and all of a sudden I was doing all of this reading, and eventually wrote A History of Agnostic Groups in AA, and to me, that was quite. It was amazing because I talked to Michelle Mirza, who's the chief archivist at the GSO, and she had nothing to give me.
Something else.
She wanted to help. She was very cooperative at all stages, and when I finally did publish it and post it on then Toronto Agnostics, and I sent her a copy, and she wrote back and asked for permission to share it with others if others asked. And of course, I was happy to do that. But that's how little there was.
And you know what's interesting? It's like, okay, these agnostic groups have been around since 1975, right. but they were kind of under the radar. And I was talking to Pam W., who helped co-found the convention, and she said that those people in LA didn't even know about the people in Chicago, and the people in Chicago didn't know about people in LA, and they didn't know about the people in New York. And they were sitting around in LA wondering, gosh, I wonder if there's any other groups like us. I think that's incredible.
I know. And even even at the time that I was doing this history, working on this history, one of the more important people in the history of agnostic groups in AA was Charlie Polachek, who started the first group called We Agnostics in Hollywood in 1980. Well, it took me forever to find Charlie. And in fact, there was just nothing there. There was nothing accessible. I ended up talking to Charlie Polachek on the phone. I called Charlie, and I said, Charlie, I'm thinking of writing this history of agnostic groups in AA. And he said, really? He was so excited that this would be written, this would be recorded. And my feeling as I was doing this thing is that it doesn't exist until you write it down.
That's right.
You know?
Right.
Like
it gets lost.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Over time.
Absolutely.
And quite frankly, you don't want to lose people like Charlie Polachek, and you don't want to lose that history.
Do you know, I really believe this, that had AA Agnostica not come about, we would have lost that history. I don't think that we would have the momentum that we have today because, I mean, that internet presence means everything. That's really how people find out about us, and that's how we connect with each other. And you guys have tremendous talent in Toronto, so this is like the perfect city to start this thing because of the talent pool that you have there, that you could write so well and put this information out there for people to consume. And it really changed lives. I mean, I'm one of them. And then, we started a group here in Kansas City, and gosh, all these other people that come to it. I mean, and this is happening all over the world.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is very kind and very generous in terms of Agnostica, but I think the whole idea of having a website, the whole idea of the internet, was certainly not something that AA had latched onto, that was, that they were all that comfortable with.
No, you're right.
Starting the website had consequences that we had no idea were going to be real, because one of the things about the internet and a website is that anybody anywhere with a computer and access to the internet can find it.
Right.
So it really was actually kind of shocking to us too, as the website grew and grew and grew over time, and there were more people. I'm so happy with the people who wrote articles for Agnostica. I think of Laurier in the United Kingdom, who wrote several articles. Gabe S. in the United Kingdom, Frank M. in California. Like, there are just so many people who just wrote such wonderful stuff. And as I say, you had the internet, you had a website, anybody could read it.
So did you start out seeking these people out to get them to write? Because this is what amazes me. And AA Beyond Belief, it's really a lot of work, making sure you got new material all the time. So it's like, in the beginning, were you guys like searching for people to help you, or did you, after a while, does people just start coming to you?
After a while, people started coming to us, but we did look and we did search out, and we did, do you know somebody? Are you familiar with someone who could write? Frank, for example, Frank had written something else somewhere else, and we saw that, and then contacted Frank and said, Frank, you got to write, you got to write for Agnostica. And Frank, you've got to write for Do Tell. The last chapter of Do Tell is written by Frank, Life on Life's Terms. Yeah, if we thought someone, would be willing to, and to contribute to Agnostica, yeah, we would ask them. We'd push them, in fact, to do it, And but in fact, a number of people would send an email saying, "Hey, can I write something for Agnostica?" I would say, "You sure can."
This is tremendous service work too. I don't know if you realized it at the time. You probably didn't intend for it to become this, but it was a real service to Alcoholics Anonymous and to the newcomer that's seeking help in Alcoholics Anonymous. Because like we said, there are a lot of people that are not going to go to AA if they think they're going to have to pray and hold hands and pray. And so just having this secular alternative means everything to a lot of people. So, and I know you didn't intend for it to become this probably. I mean, this is amazing. It's just a site that was to list your meetings, and it grew and grew and grew into the AA Agnostica that we know today. Sure.
And it was the people who contributed to it. I think there were something like 160 people wrote articles for Agnostica. There were some 360 articles written, and it took off on its own. And really, after a while, it was just like, for me and for other people involved in the website, it was just like keeping up. And just being there and being present and keeping up with the momentum that the website was gaining over time. And I love many of the articles that are, I love all of the articles, but some of them are, inspiring. They're brilliant. They're really very, very good. And they do cover a whole range of perspectives and views. There are, and that's the point. That's the point. Right. I mean, Roger could have had a website with just Roger stuff. Right. And I know Roger wouldn't have been interested in reading it. Right. Yeah. But it was the diversity, the different perspectives, the different styles, the different characters that came through the articles. That was really inspiring and really enriching. And that made the website worth the time and energy that everybody put into it. And that's what people need, because when we take this journey into the program as secular people, we all have kind of different varying paths. There's different ways we can go. I'm still trying to find my way. So it's kind of nice to have a website where you do have that diversity, where you can open your mind and you can explore and you can find your own way, maybe change your way as you go along. Mm-hmm. So, I think that's pretty important. One thing I was thinking about, Roger, I sometimes, not a lot, but I frequently get emails from people just expressing gratitude for these sites and telling me what it means to them, because they might be people that don't have meetings like this. Mm-hmm. They're in some rural area of some place, and whenever I get one of those, that inspires me to keep going. I imagine you got a lot of those letters. I got a lot of those emails indeed, and all I can say is that there are some 360 wonderful articles on Agnostica, and they're going to stay there. And the website's going to stay up, and they're well worth reading. Even art, one of the most popular articles on Agnostica was written by Frank M. in California, called An Atheist Guide to 12-Step Recovery. Yep. And it was written, in 2012, but it's the most popular post on the website with, well over 100,000 viewers, people who've read it. And you said, I think that your alternative 12 steps was one of the most popular links on the site. Very much so. Very much so. Which is, and talking about the 12 steps, because there are some of us, and I talk about this in the last post, where I say, we have different approaches to the steps. We secularists in AA, and some people don't do them at all. Right. And some people do them. And, one of the, I think as long as AA exists, the steps are going to be around in one way or another. Too. They're beautiful. I love the steps. And in the appendix 2, the spiritual experience, Bill Wilson writes about a personality change sufficient to bring about recovery from alcoholism. I know in recovery that a personality change is essential to my sobriety. I need to grow. Yeah. I need to be more connected. I need to care more about other people, which, frankly, I didn't do a very good job of as an alcoholic. So that personality change, if the steps help you to achieve that, do the steps. Yeah. And so, Yeah, the Alternative 12 Steps have been a very popular page on Agnostica. And then we published the book, The Alternative 12 Steps, A Secular Guide to Recovery, that was originally published in 1991. And it has had tens of thousands of viewers. We've published, chapter after chapter, step after step.
Yeah. That's a really good book, by the way, The Alternative 12 Steps.
There were people talking about it today at my meeting here in Hamilton who very much love it. It's really a very interesting book. It was written by a couple of women, for one thing, so it has a little bit of a different take on the whole issue of powerlessness and not just affirming character defects, but also acknowledging that we do have some qualities.
Right. Yeah, we actually read from that book sometimes during our meetings.
Yeah.
But that article that you were talking about was so popular, and it's still popular, and it was written so long ago, and that the Alternative 12 Steps are so popular. And I'm finding the same thing on AA Beyond Belief. Anytime we write about the steps and approaching them from a secular point of view, people eat that up. Mm-hmm. I think there's a real hunger for that out there. Mm-hmm. I don't think that we're all hardcore atheists that are even looking for it. I don't know, but I think that's a very important thing for us to realize. Even if we don't work the steps, I think that it's just going to be natural that a lot of us, many of us, if not most of us, are going to want to have something to do with the 12 steps. But the problem is we're going to have to interpret them in a way that works for us, which anyone has to do anyway. Mm-hmm. But I think it's more difficult sometimes for the non-believer, especially the newcomer non-believer, to try to figure out how to make sense of these. I mean, that's one question I get a lot from people is, how do you work the steps? So it makes sense to me that those would be your most popular articles and links.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is a secular approach to the steps. The steps somebody has described it as a form of cognitive behavior therapy, and I think that I wish our culture was more engaged in kind of a group therapy approach, so that people could talk about growth and change and the need for these things, I find in AA, like I go to an AA meeting and I think, wow, this is great. Everybody should go to meetings, something like this, where they can talk about what isn't working for them, what problems they have, what is working for them, and how they discovered that, and how, so yeah, I think that's an important part of being human, is growth, personality change, and the support and help of other human beings.
Yeah. I was actually thinking I had a thought on my way to the meeting today, and this is probably a thought that started generating a few days ago from a letter I received. But I was thinking to myself, you know what? What's really more important about these steps is not so much what we believe, but it's really what we do. And whenever I remember reading through the Big Book, and they would often describe this as a program of action or a practical program of action. It was never described as a program of belief. It's like it's like we've somehow gotten away from the actions that we do and that we do with each other, and we're focusing more on the what do you believe, what God is going to help you with this. So anyway, I think that's why a lot of times the people who come to secular AA do find themselves struggling trying to figure this out, because they might be going to other meetings where people aren't even talking anymore about what we actually do. They're focusing too much on what we believe.
That's a very interesting point. Yes.
Anyway.
You should write about that.
Yeah. I have these. Actually, why I started thinking about that? Some young lady posted on Facebook, on our Facebook page. She asked the AA Beyond Belief Facebook page. She says, "Do you all have a higher power?" I said, well, do you believe in a higher power? I said, well, I can't speak for all of us, but we do believe that we help each other stay sober. So I guess you could say that we are a higher power. And that wasn't good enough for her. So she come back, she says, so you do believe in a higher power? I said, well, I guess we do. But I started thinking, it doesn't really matter what we believe.
Sure.
It really doesn't. But that's what kind of got that thought in my head. But so what are your plans, Roger? I appreciate that you're going to leave AA Agnostica up, because I think that is a tremendous resource that needs to stay up. So thank you for doing that and for continuing to maintain the site. But are you still plan on publishing books and doing some writing, or what do you want to do?
Well, we're working on the practical book, Tools We Find Helpful in Recovery. We're working on that book. Other than that, I don't know what I'm going to do, and that's the exciting part of it for me. I've devoted 5 years to Agnostica, and now I'm, to me, it's part of that personality change I was talking about earlier in Appendix 2. I need to have other preoccupations, other pursuits, and I'm really looking forward to all of that.
Do you know how unusual it is for somebody in their first 5 years of sobriety to have a big website?
Well, yeah, I think it's a tad unusual. And you
were pretty busy for 5 years.
And I'm still going to be an AA-er. I just helped start a meeting here in Hamilton. Yeah. I'll be in Kansas City.
That's right. Absolutely will.
In August, and convention in November in Austin. Yeah. So I'm still an AA-er.
Absolutely.
So I need to continue that in terms of, continue that in some manner or fashion or another.
Right.
But I want to look elsewhere too, and I want to look at. I'm in I'm in a very important relationship with
right.
another person now, and I love her, and I want to make sure that relationship is wholesome and healthy and moves forward. And that is becoming a top priority for me.
Yeah, it does. It's a lot of commitment to do that, and it's good that you're doing that.
Yeah. So other than that, there are other things I want to look at. I want to look at working for a not-for-profit organization, either as volunteer or part-time employee, but just something that I believe in, and so I'm really excited about going.
Yeah, service work maybe even outside of AA.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So Roger, let's talk about your last post.
Okay.
And talk about some of the things that you wrote there. You were talking a lot about the group conscience of our fellowship. You want to go into a little bit of detail on what you feel about that, and you expand on that a little bit?
Well, I thought that after 5 years of a number of articles and 1,000 comments and a number of emails that I would try and rough out what my sense of the group conscience of we secularists is. And of course, that's all in the last post. And I deal with things like a belief in God for us is not an essential part of recovery, that human resources are indeed important.
I love that. I'm so glad they came up with that. That was a big sticking point at my old home group, and one reason I just can't bear to go there anymore is people just went freaking crazy if I denied that human power was enough for me.
Right.
So I do love that. I do like that. Yes, human power can relieve our alcoholism.
Absolutely. And so there are just some elements of that. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the steps, and I wanted to also say that what we're about as secularists in AA is not about trashing anybody. I don't have and Agnostica did not do that. There were no articles there. There might have been comments from time to time, but there were no articles that was going to trash anybody, because that's not our instinct. It's not our primary purpose. Most of the secularists that I know and that wrote for Agnostica are very compassionate and congenial with regard to other people's views. It's all they want is that our own views. All we want is that our own views be respected too.
Right.
I really think that's crucial, and it's crucial to understand that. And I think it's crucial to AA that people be respected no matter what.
Yep.
No matter what. And I've always thought that was the essence of AA. You boot somebody out of AA, I think you're not AA.
Right. Yeah.
You're not behaving in the way that AA was meant to behave, which is to help anyone, anywhere who reaches out.
Right.
So, and I think that that's by and large the secularist approach, is that, let's open this thing up. Let's be what we're supposed to be, which is, so those are some of the elements that I talk a little bit about in the last post. And I do emphasize that we are AA, and that the whole idea of, you were talking about this a little bit earlier, maybe starting a whole other organization with a different belief system. Give me a break.
Right.
It's not another belief system we need. Another
Right.
dogmatic formulation of how people should live and how they should get sober. What we need is to open up, to be open-minded, to be loving and tolerant. I don't know where I came up with that expression. But that's really what saves our asses in the end.
Right.
And
You're right.
And it's that's what AA is meant to do.
Yeah. I think that you're right, that we all have come to that consensus, first of all, that there's no deity, there's no supernatural force that has anything to do with whether or not we're going to drink or anything to do with our recovery. Absolutely. And the fact that we are AA is pretty evident in every single person that I have ever met in secular AA. They are passionate about Alcoholics Anonymous. And they might disagree with me vehemently about if I want to do the steps or this or that. I mean, we have different views and so forth. But I think that we do feel that we are Alcoholics Anonymous. And I think for the most part, I mean, there might be a few. I guess, Roger, there are some that will criticize AA, but even those people consider themselves part of it, which is a little bit odd sometimes. That's how some of them talk. But I think that view that we are AA is pretty important.
Well, I think most of the people I've ever talked to will tell you that AA saved their lives.
Yeah.
So it's and we talked about that tonight at my meeting here in Hamilton. Is what is it that works? And the consensus at tonight's meeting anyway was one alcoholic talking to another alcoholic is really what works.
Yeah.
And that's my belief as well. And one of the people who went around the table tonight, one of the people talked about, you had Bill and Bob, somebody who wanted to quit drinking and someone who wanted to continue in his life of sobriety, working together, and by golly, it worked.
Yep.
And if there's an essence of AA, to me, that's it.
Yep.
That's it. And I'm honored and proud to be a part of that when I go to a meeting. I think, okay, this is great. We're helping each other.
Yep.
That's an amazing thing for human beings to do, is to help each other. And every AA meeting I go to, that's the top priority.
It is. I was telling my wife the other day when I was telling you we had a young lady come to our meeting for the first time. It was our first meeting. I said, so we do get a lot of newcomers, and sometimes they don't come back, and sometimes they might come for 6 months or so. And I said, you know what? That's really okay, because if all they needed was that one meeting where they could feel safe and if it helped them, that one meeting, then it's worth it. If all they needed was 6 months of meetings and they could move on with their lives, great. Mm-hmm. So if we're there to help people at times when they need it, I'm okay with that. Mm-hmm. I think that's great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we don't all keep coming back, and some of us might not the first time around anyway.
Right.
So.
No, I know. I had a pretty checkered history in the beginning myself.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else you wanted to talk about, Roger, about that you can think about in that in your final post?
No, I think I would conclude by saying that I'm really happy with having done it for 5 years. I'm happy that the 5th anniversary popped up and appeared to be a good time to stop putting original posts up. I want to say that I'm, very happy with so much. I'm so pleased with so much else that is happening. You talked about that earlier. So much is happening, whether it's AA Beyond Belief and the people involved in that, which is quite remarkable. Whether it was the Santa Monica Convention, let me praise Dorothy and Pam and Jonathan. Absolutely. For putting that together. I think that was an extraordinarily big deal.
Yeah, and people are still hugely crazy passionate about the convention still to this day.
Absolutely.
So,
And more power to the people putting on the convention in Austin. And so there's a lot happening. Meetings. The idea of new meetings starting, which is, not such a big deal anymore because they're all over the place.
Over 300 now, right?
Yep, over 300. 200 of those in the last 4 years.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Over 300, 200 in the last 4 years.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Good Lord.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be interesting to know what the statistics are for AA overall? How many groups they get started up like that? I kind of think I think it's pretty significant. I don't know. And I think this is going to snowball from here.
Well, I think it's going to snowball too. And I was at, I believe in being involved in general service, and I was at the district meeting on Monday night because I'm GSR for my group. And they were talking about the general service conference and about, they were talking, one of the things they talked a lot about at the district meeting was the number of groups that are closing in Hamilton.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. So, I think that I truly believe that AA Agnostica and AA Beyond Belief and the convention were part of a tide. We didn't create it. We jumped on board because there is a movement towards a more open and tolerant AA, and there are more secularists, there are more people who describe themselves as nuns when it comes to religious affiliation, and that's where it's going, and we got on board. And if there's credit owing to us, it was like that we got on board.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I just want to thank you, Roger, to take a moment to thank you very much for not just what you've done for the fellowship and with AA Agnostica, but the friendship that I've developed with you and all the help that you've given me on AA Beyond Belief. Just the fact that you helped with that site at all it's incredible what the experience that I've had with that. And it really helps me appreciate AA Agnostica and what you did. We'll never be able to match anything close to what you guys did, but thank you. Thank you very much.
And I want to thank you, John. And I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I look forward to the upcoming events that I was talking about in Kansas City and Austin, and I look forward to being one of the big fans of AA Beyond Belief over the next few years.
I look forward to having you in Kansas City. I think Kansas City is delightful.
All right.
Well, thank you, Roger. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Well, that's it for another episode of AA Beyond Belief, the podcast. We hope you enjoyed the program. We thank you for listening, and we'll be back with you soon enough. Until then, take care and be well.